Hey guys, it's Kaylee and welcome to Hippie in a Suit, where every week I talk about sustainability because I dream of a world where people care more about the planet than Instagram models. I am so excited because it is my very first video, and because it is the first one, I'm going back to basics, starting at the very beginning, and I'm going to go over the definitions of the terms sustainability and sustainable development. Understanding these terms will really help in understanding the more in-depth concepts I'll go into later on this channel, like climate change, gender equality, human rights, decent work, you name it. So without further ado, let's kick off. In this video, I'm going to focus on the modern definition of sustainable development used in policy, academia, and the media, but I think it's really important to note that while this modern definition has gained popularity in kind of the last 30-ish years, the concept itself way predates that. It goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years, and is very much the root and basis of Indigenous cultures. We talk about it like it's this thing that was invented in the UN, but really it comes from traditional knowledge and practices, and I don't want us to forget that as we move forward and talk about what exactly it is. All right, so let's get into the history of the modern definition. So the first time we saw the definition of sustainable development in a modern context was in a 1987 report titled Our Common Future, published by the Brundtland Commission. So basically the context at that time was people were starting to get more conscious of poverty and also environmental destruction. And the UN assembled this group of 22 global experts under the leadership of Gro Harlem Brundtland, who was the former Prime Minister of Norway, to come together and to start to explore how we could address multiple crises at once. They published their report in 1987 and the definition was included there, but really where it started to gain steam was at the 1992 Earth Summit, which was quite a famous event, so you might have heard of it. It took place in Rio de Janeiro, and there was another one 20 years later, Rio plus 20, but the first one in 1992 was where the term sustainable development really started to take root. And the definition as found in that report and at that summit was as follows: meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. As with any definition or big concept, I think people will probably write in the comments or say, oh no, that's not the definition I use, or there's a better definition, or it needs more nuance. And that could totally be true, but I see this definition as the most widely used, generally accepted definition of sustainable development that's kind of withstood the test of time. So it may not be completely comprehensive or everything, but it really gets at the idea, and that's why I'm focusing on that particular definition. I also really happen to like this definition, and there's 3 reasons why. First thing I really like about it is it's simple. It doesn't use big words and jargon. It boils it down into a concept I think most people can understand. It reminds me a lot of that Gandhi quote, "The world has enough for everyone's needs, but not everyone's greed." To me, that is really what this definition encompasses, and that's a simple thing for people to understand and grasp. So I really like that. The second thing I like, and this to me is crucial, is that it focuses on intergenerational equity. So I just finished saying I like it because it doesn't include jargon, and then I throw in this big word that makes no sense. But let me explain. Intergenerational equity is essentially fairness between generations. And right now, and for the last few years, with the Fridays for the Future campaign led by Greta Thunberg, we have absolutely seen this idea of intergenerational equity. We see young people around the world saying to their leaders, you are making decisions that are going to make our lives harder in the future. And this definition encompasses that idea, that intergenerational equity idea, which I think is so beautiful and important. The third thing I really like is that it balances people and planet. There are kind of 2 schools of thought in sustainability, or kind of factions that go against each other, which is, humans are ruining everything and we need to pare everything back. Or, we have a lot of people in poverty and they need to develop regardless of what this means for the planet. And that's a little bit simplistic, but you get the idea. The cool thing about this definition is that I think it brings in this idea of people's needs, but also what's possible within the constraints of our planetary boundaries. And so for me, that is a really crucial part because it brings both dimensions together as opposed to pitting them against each other. So now that you have the big picture of the definition and why I think it's a good definition that has stood the test of time, let's go into the difference between sustainability and sustainable development, because these terms are often used quite interchangeably, which is okay, but they are slightly different. And for me, the way I think about them differently is one as the journey, one as the destination. So I think of sustainability as the end goal, what we're trying to reach. To be sustainable is to be in a state that can be sustained forever, so that we could continue in that fashion, which means that we would be living in harmony with each other and with the planet and with what resources can be replenished. That's the idea of reaching a sustainable state. So that's sustainability. The other side is the journey, how we get there, the pathways, the policies, the actions that we take that allow us to get there, and that's sustainable development. One thing I should say here is that there are people who believe the idea of sustainable and development being brought together in one term is completely contrary. It doesn't work. It's a paradox. And they say this because they say there's no way to develop, to grow, to build in a way that is sustainable. And while I see the point, because if you look at our systems right now and, even just what we experienced in 2020 with going into lockdowns and everything shutting down, we really saw that a huge amount of economic activity needed to cease for, a 7% emission reduction. I think it's hard to envision how we could grow and develop as a society without having massive implications on the planet. But me, I'm an optimist. I do believe with transformative solutions and policies, we can find new ways of thinking through our systems that allow us to develop in a sustainable way. All right, I promised this definition would be non-boring, so I'm going to start to wrap it up, but I just have two more really quick things to touch on. I wanted to note that sustainability is an inherently systemic concept. And what I mean by that is that anything that's done in one industry, sector, community, city, province, state, country, region impacts others. And this is something where I think we're not set up as a society to deal with very well, because we're very much in silos in many forms of the word, whether that be government ministries or different countries. And to truly achieve sustainability, we need to look at the entire system. The Our Common Future report has a really great quote that I think is worth just reading here really quick because it very much encapsulates this systemic idea. It says, until recently, the planet was a large world in which human activities and their effects were neatly compartmentalized within nations, within sectors, and within broad areas of concern. These compartments have begun to dissolve. This applies in particular to the various global crises that have seized public concern, particularly over the past decade. These are not separate crises: an environmental crisis, a development crisis, an energy crisis. They are all one. What I think is so interesting is this was written in 1987, and if you think about just what we've experienced in 2020, we saw a global health crisis completely rock our world and create a global economic crisis, completely change the way so many of us live and work and everything. I think this goes to show just how systemic these issues really are and how much one impact can have a ripple effect across entire systems. And the very final thing that I wanted to mention about understanding the definition of sustainability is that it is not strictly an environmental concept. And I've touched on this previously when I was talking about balancing people and planet, but I want to come back to it. Sustainability, as we know it today, sustainable development, is about three major facets of society: the social, the environmental, and the economic. The social being people's ability to meet their basic needs, such as shelter, food, education, health. Environmental being what our planet can hold and sustain, the planetary boundaries, our biodiversity, the climate, etc. And the third one being economic, our economy, our global marketplace, how we trade goods, receive goods, how we work, how we sustain ourselves financially. That's another part of sustainability. So again, the concept of sustainability, it's systemic and it balances multiple dimensions, not just environmentalism. It's about social, environment, and economic. And there's this great diagram that was done by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. I'm just going to pop it up here, that shows how these three things work together. You might have a livable society, you might have an equitable society, a bearable one, but without balancing all three of those dimensions, you don't have a sustainable one. You don't have one that can continue in perpetuity. This is a really important concept because I think a lot of governments, for example, will take sustainability or hear the word and say, okay, that's with the Environment Ministry. But it's not. It's about balancing all those dimensions. If we don't fundamentally transform the way our economies work, we won't achieve environmental sustainability or create an equitable future for so many people where there's not poverty, where they have good health care, etc. So you can see how all three of these things really do need to be balanced to create a sustainable world. And that's it. That's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for tuning into my first video. I really hope you learned something in this video, and if you have any questions or comments, please pop them in the box below and I will do my best to respond and provide resources where I can. I also always prepare a blog post that summarizes this concept in writing and includes links to my research and places you can go to learn more. And I include 1 to 2 charities or organizations that work on this topic if you're interested in supporting them or knowing more about their work. I post content here every single Wednesday related to sustainability, so if that interests you, please do subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It helps me out a ton. Thank you so much for watching. Keep fighting the good fight, and I'll see you soon. Bye!